Well, it's fun to be back here. Uh, when I moved to the high school, I found out that everybody there was smarter than I was. So I don't get to teach up there very much. But it's good to be back here, and thank y'all for letting me come. Um, Today, I wanted to talk to you. How, how do we know about God? How do we know what God wants us to do? How, how do we? Huh? The Bible, right? All right, so the Bible is where we learn about God and what He wants us to do, and should be everything we need to know about Him, right? In the Bible, there's 66 books, 1,189 chapters, 31,102 verses. All right, of those, now when you talk to the world about God, what do they want to what do they want to talk about? What do they want to discuss and argue about whether God exists? And the big thing they have is well, God couldn't have created the universe. I mean, books are written, arguments are made, but the world, when you have a discussion, that's what they want to talk about. Let's look what God says about it. In the Bible, in this 66 books, 1,189 chapters, there's two chapters on creation, 56 verses. I mean, that's just a drop in the bucket to all of that. And we're talking about the creation of the whole universe. I mean, not just our world, everything. At night, you look up into the sky and see all the stars and the cosmos, everything He created. And so, to me, that tells me that for God, it's like, yes, I did this, but that's not the big thing. That's not that important. I want you to know I did it, but that's not that important. So, what are all these other chapters and verses about? And what they're about is different people in the Bible, right? Last week in the high school, we watched a video, and something they said in that video said that for most people, they believe that the Bible is stories about good people that we're supposed to copy and live our lives like. But in reality, the Bible is full of stories about bad people that God was good to. I mean, there's really bad people in the Bible. And so, what is this Bible about? And I think all the rest of it is about relationships. It's about our relationship to God, it's about our relationship to each other, and then finally, it's about our relationship to the world. Now, the our relationship to each other and our relationship to the world has a direct bearing on our relationship with God. The Bible tells us that we can grieve the Holy Spirit and mess up that relationship with God based on the relationship we have with other people. And so today, um, title of our lesson was Gospel Meets Culture. And so we're going to talk about the last of those relationships today, about our relationship to the rest of the world. Counterculture. There's a book that David Platt wrote. I don't know. Y'all probably haven't read it. I've read it. I think Tim's read it. But the gospel is decidedly goes against everything that the world says. And it's totally countercultural. And so if we're going to bring the gospel, which is counterculture, to the rest of the world and to those cultures, then we're going to have to meet them somewhere. We're going to have to engage them. And when you think about culture, different cultures, what do you think about? Anybody? What's a different culture than yours? Anybody? Okay. All right. And a lot of times, this is what we think of as culture, right? Somebody that dresses different from us. They maybe have a different language. Um, their food's different. Here's another one. This is actually India. This is called the Holi Festival. This actually happened Friday. It's a festival they have that they celebrate the coming of spring, uh, good overcoming evil, and they call it the Festival of Colors. And it actually just happened on Friday. So, what is your culture as a middle schooler? And I think this carries into high school too. For the most part, that's your culture right there, isn't it? Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter. Probably some of you are doing that right now, right? So, as a Christian, what do we do as a Christian? What's our culture like? For the most part, once we accept Christ and we become a Christian, what do? We go to church, we go to small groups, um, maybe we go to a Christian school, but we'll isolate ourselves because see, we're one of God's children now, and so we can just sit back, take it easy, kick back, and we don't smoke, we don't drink, we don't cuss, we don't chew, we don't go with girls that do, right? So we isolate ourselves, and we never go out and get involved with the world. But see, that's not God's plan because He uses us to share the gospel to the rest of the world. Now, how many of y'all are going to Mission G? Oh, a bunch of you. Wow. I get to meet all of y'all this coming week. How many, this is your first time to go to Mission G? All right. Guys that have been before, are they going to get culture shock when they get to Mission G? You're going to get some culture shock, won't they? You're going to get to engage culture when you go there. Now, today's lesson, we're in Acts. We're talking about Paul. Now, Paul was a unique individual in that he was a Jew. He was a very intelligent, very knowledgeable, and educated Jew. He was also a Roman citizen. So that opened a lot of doors to places that other people might not be able to speak at. And so Paul has been at Thessalonica, and he got run out of town there, or left before it got too bad. And so now he's in Athens, waiting for Silas and the rest of his homeboys to get there, and they're going to share the gospel in Acts. Our text is in Acts chapter 17. We're going to start with 16 and 18. It says, while Paul was waiting for them in Athens, he was greatly distressed to see that the city was full of idols. So he reasoned in the synagogue with both Jews and God-fearing Greeks, as well as in the marketplace day by day with those who happened to be there. A group of Epicurean and Stoic philosophers began to debate with him. Some of them asked, what is this babbler trying to say? They said, others remarked, he seems to be advocating a foreign god. They said this because Paul was preaching the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. So here's Paul. He's gotten to Athens first. He's just hanging out, and he's walking around the city, and he's greatly distressed by all these gods that he sees. And so he can't wait on Silas and those guys to get there. He starts. And first thing, when Paul would go to a town, he would go to the synagogue. Because he was a Jew, he could go there and speak because of his education. And he would start talking to them about Jesus and the resurrection. And these people thought he was crazy because he's talking about a man that rose from the dead. And the Epicurean and Stoic philosophers, this is a philosophy back from like 300 BC. So it's about 350 years old at this point. And these guys, it's two different philosophies, had a lot of similarities, but they didn't believe in any kind of divine intervention, that it's just what happens, what happened. The Stoic, we get the word Stoic from them. They didn't show emotion. When bad things happened to them or good things happened to them, they didn't show emotion. And so Paul has gone to the city of Athens, and in the city of Athens, there's just gods and temples everywhere. They had a temple to the sun god, the moon god, the tree god, the flower god, anything that you could think of. So bad that they even had a temple to the unknown God. And just in case there was one that they missed, they said, well, we have this temple for the unknown God. And when we think of gods, this is what we think of, right? This is the Indian god Ganesh. I mean, when you think of other gods and idols and stuff, this is kind of what we think of. But in our life here, what idols can we have? In the back. Technology. Okay. Technology. What else can we have? I mean, some people even worship a team like this. I mean, they finally won a Super Bowl in 100 years. What's up with that? Or here, this is like a beauty counter. We worship the idea of beauty. Right? Money, that's right, money. So we have, even though we may not have this God, I bet nearly all of y'all have that God, don't you?
No, I don't.
You don't? If you don't have it, you want it.
Yes, I do.
All right, so there are gods in our lives. And it's the things that we put up at the front place of our life and importance. Let's go to the next verse, 19 through 21. It says, then they took him, which is Paul, brought him to a meeting of the Areopagus, where they said to him, may we know what this new teaching is that you are presenting. You are bringing some strange ideas to our ears, and we would like to know what they mean. All the Athenians and the foreigners who lived there spent their time doing nothing but talking about and listening to new and latest ideas. And so this Areopagus is, go back one. That's it right there. It's a big rock in Athens. And what they would do is they would go up on this rock and they would debate the topics of the day. New ideas. Somebody had a new idea. They would bring them up here and let them present their new idea. This has been going on for hundreds of years. Many of the great philosophers spoke here. It's also called Mars Hill. Eventually, they started having murder trials on top of this rock. Now, we have places like this here in America. This is one of them. My son went to Texas State. This is called the Battling the Stallions. And this is a statue in the middle of Texas State. And you can go there. It's called a free speech zone. Anybody can go there and speak and present a new idea. And my son said that a lot of times we would have somebody there just talking about something. And anybody that wanted to could come there. Well, what about here? You see people go to Starbucks all the time and they're sitting there and they're discussing the newest topics and whatever the latest and greatest thing is, and just having a conversation there. Now, for old people, old guys like me, this is where we solve problems, is in a duck blind. Because you got a lot of time to talk, and so that's where I would go. And so this is where Paul's at now. The people from there have said, hey, this guy knows something that we've not heard before. Let's hear what he has to say. So they bring him up and on top of this rock, and he's speaking to them. Acts chapter 17, verse 22 and 23 says, Paul then stood up in the meeting of the Areopagus and said, people of Athens, I see that in every way you're religious. And so, see, he finds a common ground with them. He sees that they're religious because they have all these idols. And so he's religious. So the first thing he does is he brings up this common ground. He says, look, we can talk because we've got this in common. And he says, for I walk around and look carefully at your objects of worship. I even found an altar with this inscription, to an unknown God. And it says, so you are ignorant of the very thing you worship. And ignorant there doesn't mean that they were stupid or dumb. It means that they were uninformed. So he's telling them, he says, you're totally uninformed of the very thing you worship. And this is what I'm going to proclaim to you. I'm going to tell you who this unknown God is. And so Paul relates to them. First he finds that common ground, and then he compliments them. He says, look, I see that you're religious. I see that you want to know these things. And you can go to church, and the big church up there, and you'll see the preacher say something. You see the people shaking their heads. This is what I imagine. Paul's talking, and he's got the people there shaking their head, agreeing with him. Everything's cool. And then he tells them, he says, so let me tell you who this unknown God is. And he doesn't attack them personally. And don't let that word ignorant there think, like we told somebody they were ignorant, we'd have a fight on our hands. He's telling you're uninformed. Let me tell you about this. And so Paul was great at that. 1 Corinthians 19 through 23 says, to the weak I became weak to win the weak. I have become all things to all people so that by all possible means I might save some. I do all this for the sake of the gospel, that I may share in its blessings. Though I am free and belong to no one, I have made myself a slave to everyone, to win as many as possible. To the Jews I became like a Jew, to win the Jews. To those under the law I became like one under the law, so as to win those under the law. To those not having the law I became like one not having the law, though I am not free from God's law, but I am under Christ's law, so as to win those not having the law. And so Paul became whatever he had to do to build this relationship with these people of the world. And he worked hard at it. He found a way to connect with them and find this common ground. Now he also knew, Paul became a Christian. He knew the Bible. He knew the Old Testament. I mean, he was a scholar. He could spout it out to you. And he had, how did Paul accept Christ? How did he come to know Christ? Somebody tell me.
He was Saul, and then his heart got changed and turned Paul.
He what? He was Saul and what?
And then
Say it loud.
he was Saul, then his heart changed and turned Paul.
Okay. What happened to him? Right? He was on the road to Damascus and God blinded him, right? Now, there's not many people going to have that experience. So Paul couldn't tell him, says, look, this is the experience you're going to have when you know Christ. He's going to blind you, all these things. No. They're not going to have that kind of experience. So he's going to find a way to relate to it. Back to our original text, Acts 17, 24 through 27. It says, he's talking about this unknown God now. The God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth and does not live in temples built by human hands. And he is not served by human hands, as if he needed anything. Rather, he himself gives everyone life and breath and everything else. From one man he made all the nations that should inhabit the whole earth, and he marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands. God did this so that they would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is not far away from any of us. For in him we live and move and have our being. As some of your own poets, he's talking to the people of Athens, have said, we are his offspring. So even some of the poets, see, he draws them back in. So some of your own poets say that we are his offspring. we continue on verse 29. Therefore, since we are God's offspring, we should not think that the divine being is like gold or silver or stone, an image made by human design and skill. In the past, God overlooked such ignorance, but now he commands all people everywhere to repent. For he has set a day when he will judge the world with justice by the man he has appointed. He has given proof of this to everyone by raising him from the dead. Now let's go back. Remember that Hindu guy I showed you earlier with the elephant face? Because of my job, I actually did a construction project at the Hindu temple here in town, over here. That's the god that they worship. And it's very interesting because I would get there early before anybody else got to work. And I got to meet the guy, he's called the director of the temple there. They have these priest guys, and this guy's the director. And I would have these conversations with him, but I would get there early, and one of their priests would come out. He'd have these keys on a keychain. He would unlock the lock and open this gate and go into this god. Now, that's the first thing that strikes me, is here they have this god. He's enclosed in this little cubicle thing, and they've got him locked up. And I'm thinking, you can't put my God in a little square box and lock him up. And are they trying to keep him in? Are they trying to keep people out? I don't know. And then the next thing they do is they bring this food in here in these little deals, and they feed this God. And they leave it there for him. He comes back out, he shuts a little gate, puts a little lock on it, and then he walks around it like 10 times one way, 10 times the other way. And so here they have a God that's made with human hands that they've locked up in this little cage, and they have to feed it every day. And here we have a God that is here among us, and we don't feed him, he feeds us. And so they have this festival that celebrates the good overcoming evil, and they have a huge party, and they're celebrating this. And then we, here as Christians, we have the true good that overcomes evil, and we just find it hard to even talk about it. And like those gods that we showed earlier, what were they? Telephone? New iPhone comes out, what, every year? What was that football team? I forgot. Eagles. We all know, you know, they're fleeting. They're not going to win again. So some of these guys like this are very fleeting. They come and they go, right? Tom Brady. How many Super Bowls has he won? 5. You know what Tom Brady said in an interview? Have y'all seen it? What did he say?
He said that there was more, he thought there was more to life than just all the money and Super Bowl rings.
Exactly. Here's the man that every guy wants to be. He's got a supermodel wife. He's got a mansion. He's got 5 Super Bowl rings. One of the greatest football players ever played. And he says, there's got to be more to it than this. What am I missing? Let's go to the next verse. Acts 17, 32 through 34. It says, when they heard about the resurrection of the dead, some of them sneered, but others says, we want to hear you again on this subject. At that, Paul left the council, he left the rock. Some of the people became followers of Paul and believed. All right, so here we have Paul. When he brings up the resurrection, it starts to offend people. The gospel always offends the world because it's totally opposite of what the world teaches. And it's going to offend people. It's going to make them angry. It's going to antagonize them. Now, Paul, he did the right thing here. He doesn't stay and he doesn't argue with them, because if anybody could argue with somebody on religion, it's Paul. But he just takes his stuff, gets off the rock, and he leaves. He's planted the seed. And what does the Bible say? Some of them believed. And so remember that when you take the opportunity to try and share the gospel. You're going to make some people mad at you. They may get angry at you. Don't engage them in anger. Just walk away. If you've told them the truth, then you've done what you've got to do. You've planted the seed. Maybe someday they'll realize what you were talking about. Now then, all you guys going to Mission G, right? You're going to have the opportunity to share the gospel. Y'all been working on your skits and everything, studying, work days, all that stuff. Everybody ready? All right. So you're going to share the gospel with a different culture down there. One of the questions I have for you is, why is it so easy to do that down there? And so hard to do it tomorrow at school? Well, y'all going to talk about that in your groups here in a minute. It's one of the questions we have. But we do that. I see it all the time. This will be my 5th year to go to Mission G. We go down there, and boy, you guys are on fire, and everything's great, and maybe for about 2 weeks you come back, and everything's cool, but then everything just kind of slacks off. And me as an adult, I'm as bad as y'all are. So a lot of times, maybe we get embarrassed. We're afraid we're going to make a fool of ourselves. Maybe somebody would like us. A couple of years ago, Tim was last night, he did the Devo. The title of it was Now What? And this is one of the greatest messages I've heard Tim preach. We should have taped it and do it every year to him. But it's like, now what? I mean, here we're all in church. Everything's great. But now what? What are you going to do tomorrow? See, we're like these people that live inside this little compound in the middle of the desert, and we have this well right in the middle of town. How many dollars drink from a well? We let the bucket down and pull it up to get drink water? Anybody? Anybody? Any of you adults, old people? Nobody can think I'm really on the page. Anyway, in other countries, that's why they get the water. Remember the woman at the well Jesus talked to? Well, what if you're like this person that lives in this little compound, you have this well, and it's the best water, it's sweet, and it's so cold, and outside in the desert, people are running around, they're dying for a drink of water. They would drink pond scum just to have something to drink. And we come up on top of the wall, we look down at them, and what do? Maybe we pick and choose who we want to go drink to. Because maybe that guy, oh, he doesn't deserve it. He's done this. He doesn't deserve a drink. Maybe that's what our problem is we want to pick and choose who deserves it. Remember Jonah? Got stuck in the belly of the whale. Why? Because he thought the people that God sent him to didn't deserve to hear about God. Now, doing this lesson hit home for me. Because there's a man in my life that I struggle with because I think he's not worthy of the gospel. Because he's been so awful to my life and to my kids and my family. And I have a hard time wanting to share the gospel with him and praying for him. And I've been committed to that, studying this lesson, and I've made a commitment to start praying for him and the opportunity to share the gospel with him. His name's Gary, and so hopefully I can come back and tell you by the time that I got to share the gospel with you. Now, we all have the same call to God to share the gospel. And a lot of times, what we do, we bring our friends to church, right? I think church for a lot of Christians is a cop-out. Because we'll bring our friends to church because we want Tim to tell them about the gospel, or we want Pastor Gary to tell them about the gospel. And I do that. I bring them to church instead of me sharing the gospel. People come to church, man, we got great music, we got things for kids to do. But no, there are people, and every one of you, I want you to think right now, there are people in your life that do not know God, that Tim will never see, that Pastor Gary will never see. I want each one of you to think of that name in your head right now. When y'all do breakouts in one of your groups, I want your group leader to ask you, just give them the first name. Who's that boy, who's that girl that is never going to have the opportunity to hear Tim tell them about the gospel? You're going to have to do that. Because maybe you're the only person that can relate to them. Now, Paul challenges us with a story to engage. And if we don't, the Bible tells us that we're grieving God. We're grieving the Holy Spirit. In the very first verse, verse 16, Paul says, he was greatly distressed about all gods that he saw in Athens. He was grieving. It bothered him greatly. My question to you, as we get ready to go to breakout groups and stuff, is do you grieve for anybody? Does it bother you that there are people out there that don't know the gospel, that haven't had a chance to share the